Hey guys, I'm back. Well, I thought to myself that I haven't done a proper video of me talking in a very long while, and I thought I would do another book review since book reviews are the the videos that I'm loving the most. So, recently I've been reading Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. Oh, by the way, I'm in the village, as you can see, but I don't have my camera stand, that's why I'm holding the selfie camera, and behind me is just the background of the same background in front of me. Whatever. But I've read Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. I mean, Dostoyevsky books. This is not the first time that I'm reading them. At first, I've read The Gambler, which was a short novel, but it's like 200 pages. But within those 200 pages, you get a lot of characters and very messy situations. Um, Besides that, after that, at the beginning of the year, I've read The Eternal Husband, which was a more mature story that Dostoevsky wrote, I think, later in his 50s. And that was a bit more complex than I would have understood. But recently I've read Crime and Punishment is like two parts. There's part one and there's part two. I've just finished with reading part one, which was 400 pages, and part two is also 400. So that's like 800 and more pages. But I thought that I would talk about part one since it's the one that I've finished. Um, Now, Crime and Punishment is obviously one of the most famous books in the world, along along with War and Peace, which with what which by Leo Tolstoy, and you guys know Fyodor Dostoevsky and Leo Tolstoy are the pioneers of like Russian literature and the most famous authors. But along with being the longest novels in the world, because War and Peace is also very long, and I will read that too soon, but it requires a lot of patience because it's like I don't know how much it's a lot of pages. But uh, reading Crime and Punishment is really a let me check if this is recording. Oh yes, reading uh, Crime and Punishment was a very different experience from reading any of the other novels or short stories that I've read. Not that I've read that many, but uh, it was definitely very different from um, The Gambler or Eternal Husband because it's longer. It takes a slower pace into the events, which you would understand by details what is happening, what are the characters talking about, what they are going through, what they are thinking, what will happen next, all of the messes. Well, uh, where was I? Oh, yes. Uh, the reason it was different was because Dostoevsky really takes his time with going into depth of what the character is doing, what it has done, what will it do, what is going through the character's mind. Those are really details that Dostoevsky here pays a lot of attention to. Now, obviously, our main protagonist or the main hero here is Raskolnikov, and Dostoevsky really has this habit of presenting like broken or fallen heroes. Like they are not perfect in any sense. They are very human. They make human mistakes, and they fall into this trap, and they end up ruining their own lives with their own hands. They end up self-sabotaging the lifestyle that they used to have. Now here, our main hero, Raskolnikov, does something very unnatural that is not in his habit. He commits a crime by the obvious title of the book. Now Raskolnikov is not by any means a serial killer. He did not have the intention to kill, but I guess this feeling rose in him because um, he was studying law. He wrote a article about the nature of crime and where it comes from. But I don't know. I guess from his sense of despair and I don't know. Guess not finding a point of his life, he just became jealous of an old woman who was making bids he used to go to and trade things for money, like watches and other things. For some reason, he felt like she was an extra person living on Earth. Like, why does she deserve to live and others don't? Like, what is this woman doing besides taking money, living, taking up space on Earth? This was really his idea about how to kill her. In the story, we get introduced to one of his best friends whom he hasn't met in a very long time, which is, I don't know how to say it because I read the book in Arabic. It's Razumikhin. I know Raskolnikov and Razumikhin maybe in English, I'm not sure. Now, it takes a lot of time to think about how to commit this evil plot because it comes really out of nowhere, and he studies what he is going to do. So he goes to this old woman's house for the bit to make an excuse. He really studies where to take the stairs, go to the room, see what she has here and there on every corner, just to really plan what he is going to do. Now, here Dostoevsky really goes into the mentality of Raskolnikov, as if he's explaining what a murderer would feel and go psychologically in order to plan and commit, and later what will go on with a criminal's life. Now, here he plans to go to the apartment building where she lives in late at night, where she lives in a very poor neighborhood where there's market and there's stuff sold on the floor. But he goes there. She feels scared, but I think he's the one who keeps pushing the door. He talks to her. I think he's been there many times, but at the time that he really plans to commit the crime was when it is, I think, unsure. It was like 6 or 7 at the evening. It was like going dark, and he says, "I'm Raskolnikov," and he tries a bit to push the door for the sake of like bidding and talking to her. But what we don't know is that he really thought of how commit to crime. Like, he prepared a coat, and in this coat he prepared a small pouch where he would put um, what do we call it? I forgot what we called in English. The thing that he calls it, an axe. Yes, he finds an axe as if it was on purposely uh, put there in the kitchen of his apartment building. So he really he really commits it. Like, that's the crazy part, and Dostoevsky really explains it really beautifully about the details of how he prepares everything and how he at the part where he commits the crime. But something very unexpected occurs is where um, when he opens the door and talks to the woman, and she gets busy with I think counting the money. This is where he takes the axe and he strikes her, and it hits her skull from behind. He kills her. She's on the floor, and blood is streaming on the floor. But something very unexpected happens, where he goes to the other room to take the jewelry, the things that she had, the money, which were all stored under her bed, because that that is what he expected the place of those stuff to be. But the crazy thing is that he ends up doing two crimes at the same time, where the old lady's sister comes along, who is very naive and not very naive, but I should say innocent. But her older sister like controls her and controls her life. She comes and she becomes very shocked with seeing that her sister is dead on the floor, And here Raskolnikov cannot hide, cannot do anything. If he goes out, her sister will see him. But what she does is that she becomes very shocked. She doesn't know what to do. She looks at Raskolnikov, and Raskolnikov takes the axe and strikes her too and kills her. Now you see? No, this wasn't planned, but this takes a very crazy lead on how the events are going to be. Because Raskolnikov was intending to kill the old lady, not her sister too. But this was his first committed plan to kill someone. And he ends up killing two, not only one. Now, over the course of part one, what leads after the crime is that, well, he hallucinates. Raskolnikov just hallucinates. He becomes sick. He starts wandering the street with his old shabby clothes that he wears. He doesn't know what to do at this point because it is later on that hits him that he committed a crime and he starts to going crazy. So he hallucinates. He doesn't know what to do. He goes to so many places. He wanders the streets, and he goes to his house to think of where to hide the box of jewelry and money. But he thinks, what if the authorities come and find out that I'm the killer, and they know that I've been hiding him in his room, which is like a very old, dirty, one-bedroom apartment. But where was I? Yes. Instead of doing that, he goes to an old yard, like it's an old junkyard, and he goes and buries all of the belongings that he stole, like under the ground, where no one would see him, and he hides them by putting on them a big rock. And it's later where we will find out what happens to those stuff. But resume. Is it resuming? Oh yes. Oh, that's the sunset. Anyway, where was I? Okay, so he hid his stuff. Um, he hallucinates. His fever rises. He becomes very sick, and he comes back home, and he stays in bed for a very long time because it really affected on his health, the things that he has done. But during the time he is sick, his friend Razumikhin comes and stays with him and takes care of him because he's such a great friend. What else? Why do I keep forgetting? Oh yes, he receives this letter from his mother, this very long letter explaining that hopefully if they get the time they would come, they would check up on their son, and they send him an amount of money that he would spend, and talking about his sister that will hopefully soon get engaged, which later breaks off. A lot of details which I don't want to get to because the book is long enough, and I've been talking, and I want to do a part two. Yeah, so he becomes better. Some additional characters get introduced later. By the end, we meet Borferi. Borferi is a very sneaky man who is trying to convince Raskolnikov, or he's suspicious that he has at least done something, because he's spoken with all the people who have bidded with the old woman, and Raskolnikov is the only one left. And and they end up having this long conversation about the nature of crime and how he has done an article about crime, and and how he says that this was a crime committed. He knows, and he's trying to make Raskolnikov fall into his trap. He's saying the person who committed this crime did not commit any crimes before. This was his first time. Like, he was very smart. Um, it was Borferi, it was... I can't remember all these characters. But later on too, we get introduced to his mother and his sister who come to check up on him. A fight happens because Raskolnikov is still hallucinating, is not feeling very well. It's getting dark. I better finish. Um, they end up coming back and forth. A lot of conversations happening, um, but it's mostly Borferi trying, and the talk circulating about this woman and how Raskolnikov um, happened to be uh, at the old woman's house a few days before the crime was committed, and how he went to the police station with no obvious reason, and how he hallucinated there and became very sick and fell. But what I really, really mostly enjoyed about part one is the part where the crime is explained, the characters are introduced initially, and really just the way um, I see the Russian community portrayed by Dostoyevsky, because I feel like I've I've resonated a lot with the actions and the talks that um, uh, Dostoevsky has explained, and how they are very similar to us Easterns. Like a lot of traditions, and a lot of the way they are talking and they are behaving is just so much near us Easterns. That's really really what I loved. And Dostoevsky is such a genius for really portraying such in depth look at characters. Like, it's crazy how he goes into the details and the effort he puts just to construct the mentality of a character. That's why they say Dostoevsky is really fitting to study for the students of psychology and psychotherapy, because he really goes into the mind of a character. Like, you would read other novels, but you would only say what the characters are talking and speaking, are saying. But Dostoevsky really goes in depth about what the character is even thinking, like all the details. Like, what did he do and where he went, and he went down the ladder, and he goes to the bar and he drinks, and then he falls, and he thinks that he's okay, and he goes really into the mind of a certain character. And what gives its character depth is that each character has its own personality and thought and actions and reactions. And we will hopefully continue that in a second part, that I would hopefully either attach or not attach to this video. But enjoy sunset with me, guys. Here's the kitties. I'm recording from the screen, that's why I have a square. Oh look, it's getting night. That's why the vision is not clear enough. Oh, there's the moon. And the crickets. And the sunset. See you guys.